Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone, dear colleagues. So today is the World Soil Day, and we are hosting an amazing panel to put on stage soil health for land and climate. So we are counting on you for the debate. And maybe I can ask, would you mind telling me from the audience who you are? Scientist, who is scientist? Okay. Policymaker, NGO, civil society, international organization, national organization, actor of the private sector. Okay. So we need your input during the discussion. We count on you. Soil provides multiple ecosystem services. As such, soil health should consider at least 3 points. Enhancing many soil ecosystem services requires multifunctional management. Managing soil to improve one service can have a positive or a negative impact on other services. Soil health management should sustain soil services in the long term. Soil health concept emerged from soil quality in the 1990s. Since then, it has gained importance in the scientific agenda. For example, if we look at the Web of Science from 2000 to 2023, about 6,000 scientific publications has been published by research team addressing soil health in many diverse domains such as environmental science, ecology, multidisciplinarity science, agronomy, and forestry. Soil health has also gained in importance in the political agenda. At the UN level, through the land degradation neutrality target, with several special issues published by IPCC and IPBES, at the EU level, with the Green Deal, at the African level, with the African Union Initiative on Soils, at the international level, in the 4 per thousand initiative for soil and climate and food security. Our event, co-organized by UNCCD, IRD, CIRAD, 4 per thousand initiative, and CSFD, we want to be an interactive event. 2 questions will be raised to the panelists. Ideas, topics, gaps to be filled will be collected and analyzed during a wrap-up session at the end of the session. So without further ado, let's move to the first question. The Science Policy Interface of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification has analyzed the key messages of the special report of climate change and land and of the report of Working Group 1. From this analysis, the Science Policy Interface of UNCCD drew 12 main conclusions. One of them is land and climate are interconnected. And the sub-conclusions are largely focused on the key role of healthy soils and rich organic soils. So my first question to the panelists and to the audience is, how do you feel healthy soil could contribute to achieving land degradation neutrality and climate neutrality? To answer this question, 6 experts will take the floor. Ms. Marie Minuyota, from a Policy Advocacy Program Officer at the Participatory Program and Land Management in Kenya. Dr. Jérôme Tondo, Associate Professor at Nangui Abrogoa University, Abidjan, Ivory Coast. Ms. Mabel Neshavatim, Lecturer at University of Bewa, Cameroon, Coordinator of the Department of Risk Management. Dr. Oscar Ortiz from Peru, Senior Research Director of Crop-Based System at UNCCD. Dr. Ndeye Hélène Diallo-Ndiaye, soil scientist from the Senegalese Agricultural Research Institute in Senegal, and Dr. Nabil Benkatra, Executive Secretary of the Sahara and Sahel Observatory in Tunisia. So please, Marie, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Mary Irungo. I work with Pelham Kenya. In full is participatory ecological land use management, the Kenyan chapter. We work with smallholder farmers in Kenya and pastoralists. Just to your question, I would like to highlight the current challenges that smallholder farmers are tackling currently, starting from the deforestation, where we have to increase the land so that we are able to feed the population. And here the other challenge that came into place is on the monocropping, still to increase the food for our community. And climate change has contributed also to challenges where drought and pastoralist community that we work with end up overgrazing the land and degrading the soil available. But working with smallholder farmer, one of the key challenges that they are currently facing is on maintenance of the soil fertility. This has been mainly contributed by the overuse, misuse of the synthetic fertilizers and pesticide, which is highly contributing. However, as Pelham Kenya, our main approach toward addressing these challenges is by promoting agroecological practices. To start with, on the issue of soil fertility, we identify which are the available resources within the community and use it either to compost and improve the soil nutrient. Also practices like making bokashi to ensure that the soil is well amended. And other practices like the black soldier fly that is being highly promoted. However, the challenges that still as a practitioner we are having is the science that can back the practices. For example, if it is in the compost, what amount of nutrient is in this? If it is like the bokashi, depending with the materials that we have used, it will give different nutrient amount. The science to show when are we going to apply, at what point, and which plant to give which type of nutrient. But also to appreciate that in Kenya we have companies that currently, or private sector, that are providing organic fertilizers to improve the soil. But what we say at the community level, we don't tell communities don't use synthetic fertilizer, but we emphasize efficient use of the fertilizers, efficient use of the composting, efficient use of the resources that we have to ensure that we build on the soil. But also the issue of soil erosion is one of the other challenge. But from the agroecological aspect, we are promoting crop rotation and structures like, in Kenya, we call them fanya juu, fanya chini terraces that are keenly supporting smallholder farmers in conservation of the soil or reduction of the soil erosion. From the Kenyan perspective, that our practitioner, that's what I can say for now.
Thank you so much. Agroecology, efficient use of any type of input. Thank you so much. Jérôme?
Thank you very much. I'm not going to present myself. I think you did it very well. I think we all know that Côte d'Ivoire is one of the top, I think, cocoa producer in the world. And land degradation is one of the threats to our development. So the country, the government, committed to strongly promote sustainable land management approaches that is key to promoting land health. Through reducing deforestation, promoting agroecology, and I think restoring degraded lands. So recently, a cross-cutting program was put in place, I think, during the last COP15 that was held in Côte d'Ivoire, and it's called the Abidjan Legacy Program. It's a multi-dimension disciplinary program worth 2.3 billion US dollar. The main idea is to come up with, I think, approaches to tackle land degradation and also ultimately soil degradation. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of what's going on currently on the ground. First, the promotion of cocoa-based agroforestry to stop deforestation and as a way to promote deforestation-free cocoa cultivation. So I think the country is operating at national level, but also at regional level by getting together with Ghana and chocolate and cocoa companies to promote cocoa-based agroforestry. And I can say that up to at least 1 million of hectares has been restored using that approach. The second example is the agroecological, I think, transition through market gardening. I think I'm involved in several projects with IRD and CIRAD that promote the use of organic amendment to strengthen, I think, soil, the capacity of soil to sustain agricultural production. And for instance, we are promoting the use of organic amendment, cover cropping, and rotation with strong participation of farmers and policymakers. The third example lies in the promotion of agricultural diversification in cashew landscape. Côte d'Ivoire is, again, the top production in cashew nuts, and we can't continue, I think, cropping the way we are doing right now. Right now is, I think, monocropping that is in use, and the only way to prevent further, I think, soil degradation is to, I think, recommend sustainable use of soils by promoting diversification, agroecological diversification, and intercropping and agroforestry. So these practices have the potential to reduce erosion, to improve nutrient cycling, and to enhance agricultural productivity and thereby improve the livelihood of farmers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jerome. So, again, we have earth, soil erosion, soil health, nutrient cycling, no leak in the cycle of nutrient agroecology and agroforestry based system and agroecology. So, Mabel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So I'm Mabel from Cameroon. So I'm more involved with the science, being a lecturer. So most often what we do is carry out research linked to climate change and variability. And I will just give an example of one of the research work that we carried out in the Western Highlands of Cameroon, specifically in the Tuba subdivision. So the Tuba subdivision is found in the northwest region of Cameroon. So there was a study where we tried to check how climate change and variability was affecting the yield of potato growth in that particular locality. So we got climate data from 1995 to 2015. And from it, we observed that there has been a negligible increase in temperature of about 0.09 annually for that period, and the same with rainfall, about 25 millimeter per year. And one of the statistics that we found out was that this increase in temperature and rainfall were significantly affecting potato yield. But When we went further, we discovered that the role that they play in reducing the yield of potato was almost negligible when it was compared to land degradation practices. And corroborating this with another study that was carried out by another lecturer on the different land use practices that are carried out in that Tuba subdivision, we observed that prior to the 1980s, the physical environment, the physical land in the Tuba subdivision had no stress, because at that time they mostly did traditional monocultural activities. But as population was increasing, getting into the 2000s and 2023 to moving from 29,000 to 65,000 people, the stress on the land began to increase, because the main activity, main livelihood activity of the people of Tuba is subsistence agriculture and also grazing, cattle grazing. So there was more stress that was being placed on the land based on the analysis that they carried out. And this more stress required that it led to significant land degradation, because one of the things that affect crop growth there is pests and diseases. And to be able to address that, they had to use pesticides without any following any legislation. And because of that, it went ahead to cause soil degradation. And today, what is actually happening in that area, because of soil degradation, there's increased frequency of climate-related hazards like floods and landslides, which is further causing soil degradation in the area. So on the part of researchers, what we are trying to do with, we are right now involved in a project called the Climate Adaptation Research Program, working in partnership with the University of Arizona and other African universities. So one of the aspects of our research is to go in depth to carry out further research on the soils, check their physical chemical properties, and then be able to engage the stakeholders from the local community and at the level of the ministry, and see how we can improve on the soils to be able to sustain or maintain the livelihood of the people, since they are predominantly farmers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mabel. So we move from Kenya to Ivory Coast to Cameroon, and we have heard that if we need to address soil health, we need to also take care of population growth, land degradation, in order for the sake of livelihood of rural people. So thank you. So Oscar, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. At the CGIAR level, we work on research related to soil from different perspectives. From the microsystem, let's say soil health, soil microbiome, up to the macrosystem, which has to do with the water catchments, hydrological models, policy levels, etc. What we have realized, however, is that acting to enhance the contribution of soil health to achieve land degradation neutrality has to do with stakeholders. Stakeholders are the ones that act in the soil, and soil effects have direct impact in stakeholders. So we need to make a good job in connecting these different levels from the microsystem to the macro system if we really want to mobilize action to enhance soil health and the soil contribution to reduce land degradation. I think we need to bring together these different stakeholders' views, not only in the scientific community, because in the scientific community, even scientists have different views, you know, agroecology, nature positive, conservation agriculture, sustainable intensification, and sometimes these different views don't talk to each other sufficiently. At the end of the day, most of them have the same objective, but we are somehow trapped into not science-based decisions, but sometimes a little bit more ideological. So we need to really do a good job of generating the evidence that is needed for the stakeholders to make those decisions. So I just wanted to indicate that in the case of Peru, for example, we have now the threat of El Niño. El Niño brings tremendous rain in some parts of the world of Peru, and most people is worried about that because it puts risks to crops, to production, to people, to infrastructure, etc. But there is no discussion at all what's the meaning of that for soil. And you know, when there is tremendous rain, there is a huge amount of soil lost very rapidly, but that is not part of the discussion. And there are measures that could be taken, for example, reforestations in the upper parts of the mountains to prevent, to reduce the risks, but that's not happening. Soil is not visible for many people, and we need to make soil much more visible for society in general, since it is such an essential element for our survival. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oscar. So we have heard that there is a need to connect people from stakeholder to local community, but also to the national government, and to get to be unified in the diversity. I fully agree with that. So, Hélène.
Thank you. My name is Ndeelin Diallo-Diagne. I am the soil scientist at the Senegalese Institute for Research in Senegalese Institute for Agronomic Research. And I would like to say that healthy soil can contribute to land neutrality and climate because it should refer to set of practice that ensure plant nutrient requirement, guarantee productivity, and without compromising environment. From the point of view of Senegalese research, I could say following the soil mapping of soil fertility from the Dundal Souf project, the results are we have low organic matter content, below 1.5 for most of the country, low soil nutrient level, for example, nitrogen less than 1.12%, the P below than 15 ppm. It means that we have low level of soil nutrient, and the consequences are farmers are using many fertilizers, overuse fertilizers and pesticides to have the better yield. And the other issue is for varieties. The potential, there is a gap between the potential yield and the real yield that the farmers have in the field. For example, for the millet, that is one of the most consumed in Senegal, the potential yield can be 1.5 tons per hectare, and we have only 700 kilograms per hectare. So we are far from the security, food security or sovereignty. It means also that we need to go by practice that improve those conditions. And adding organic matter is one of those. It can not only improve the carbon stocks, but also ensure that we get more fertility in soil and making our agriculture more resilient to climate change. It means healthy soils is not an option for us, but it's a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hélène. Thank you for having, informed, the audience and ourselves on key facts after population growth and climate issue. You stress or you raise the fact that in many areas soils are very poor. So we need to deal with this poor soil, and we need to use practical management to improve soil health. Nabil.
Thank you, Jean-Luc. I think that the link between healthy soils and land degradation neutrality is obvious. The different examples presented by the colleagues are edifying, clear, and concrete. Our colleague from CGR raised the issue of the involvement of the different stakeholders, because we need to work at different levels, local, national, and even at international levels. But for that, we need informations and we need data. And if we look to the three sub-indicators of the land degradation neutrality, we have the land cover change, we have the land productivity, and the soil organic carbon. And each of these three sub-indicators is directly linked to the state of soil and to the health of soil. So the soils that are productive, are good soils, are in health. The soil that can storage carbon, organic carbon, that soils that can produce vegetation and can store them as organic matter. And this was raised also by Jean-Luc, the link between healthy soils and land degradation neutrality and the objectives of the climate change. So we are dealing with both adaptation and mitigation. So for adaptation, we have soils that can support the local community to produce. And for example, I'm coming from Africa, and in the different, and maybe at all levels, Africa countries are having their economics and having their based on agriculture and based on the land. So this issue is very, very important. Mitigation, of course, healthy soils can contribute to mitigation through the absorption of CO2, and this is very important to have land covers that are able forests and but we need this information and we need this data, we need these indicators to compare what is happening everywhere. So at OSS, we are producing for all countries of Africa the three sub-indicators at very high resolutions. We are using Sentinel data, for example, for land cover mapping, and we are working now to finalize these indicators. These indicators will be ready, the three sub-indicators will be ready in the first semester of 2024, and we will give them to all the African countries and will support them to know how they use them, to valorize them. This will help for the reporting to the conventions, mainly to the UNCCD, but also to have good strategies. So we can make planning, we can make strategy without good data, without up-to-date data that are objective and coherent. So all this data will be produced and given to the countries. And another issue is the synergies. So when we have a good database with good information, we can endeavor for the synergies between the convention, because when we are speaking about, for example, land cover mapping or land cover change also is useful for the convention on desertification, but also useful for the biodiversity convention and also climate change. And each one of these convention and each stakeholder working at the national level need this information to report to this convention, but also to planify and to have silent strategies and programs. So what you are doing at OSS is to reinforce the capacities of our country member to produce this kind of data, to have this new mindset that is focusing on the development based in objective indicators and objective tools. Thank you.
Much, Nabil. So we move from Kenya, Ivory Coast, Senegal, Peru, Cameroon, and on a global view on data. We need data to help for reporting process. So now we can have a debate with the audience. If you have any question, or you can challenge the panelists, not the moderator, only the panelists. Okay, so introduce yourself, be sharp, and
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Kagel Maso. I work for CJR, so with Oscar and others. I'm in charge of the Environmental Health and the Biodiversity Impact Area Platform. My question is, it's not a question, it's even a comment, but I would like to hear from the panelists. One of the critical issues in some, especially when we talk about smallholder farmers, is really the access to the organic matter material. You just said it with Pelham and others. What can we do? What approaches can we think about to be able to bring the organic matter in the systems? What could be the tips you can share with us? Then the other thing I was looking for, I'm a soil scientist and I did soil chemistry. Later on, I realized that I should have done soil microbiology. So I want to hear something from you guys in terms when we talk about the soil health and land degradation. What do you think we need to do in terms of indicators and so on with the soil microbiology aspect, soil biology in general? Thanks.
thank you so much. If it's okay with the panelists, we can have another question, and I will give the floor to the panelists afterwards. Another question, yes? Introduce yourself.
Vincent Blanfort from CIRAD. I'm researcher in a livestock research unit, and I heard all the panelists talking about fertility, but I don't hear something about the association between livestock and agriculture. I think it's very important, and I'd like to know what about that. What do you think about this question in your different country? Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. No more question? Yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Juma Said Tusubila from Uganda, and we have the best soil in the world, and and there are two things that usually happen. One of the most fertile regions is called the Elgon region, and the soils have been overused. But whatever people put in the soil comes up in bumper harvest. So there's been so many landslides, but people can't leave that area. There is no place that can be comparable to that in terms of soil fertility. And it's an issue in our country. But over the years, before, anywhere in Uganda, if you throw a seed on ground and just pour some little water, it germinates. The soil is healthy. But of late, it's difficult for even crops that we used to think like maize will grow naturally to even grow for 3 weeks, 4 weeks without you spraying. If you don't spray, you will not get anything from them. And it's now going to cause a lot, I think a lot of like pesticide exposure, and I don't know. So I don't know from where you stand, what you would advise maybe like our local farmers in Uganda in terms of these areas, and even policymakers, how can they better protect the soil, because our soil is still good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A last one. And after that, I will give the floor to the panelists.
Thank you very much. My name is Jana from GIZ, and I have a question regarding practices like agroecology, because there was recently a climate risk analysis conducted in Cameroon, and the results show, of course, that, for example, agroecology is a super important practice also to enhance organic matter and in terms of adapting to the impacts of climate change. But on the same side, we have variability of varieties of rainfall patterns, we have drought, and so in some parts of the country agroecology might not be the right practice considering the impacts of climate change. So maybe you can share some of your perspectives how this is considered when finding local solutions to adapt to the impacts of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who wants to answer, of course, not all the question, but who wants to grab one of these questions? Yes, please.
Thank you. I'll start with the question on the how do you advise farmers to increase the organic matter in the soil? First, I would love to mention that within the farm, there are so many materials and resources, let me say plant-based materials that can be used, for example, to make compost. And also after harvesting, for example, most of the biomass that are left in the farm can be used. But looking after harvesting our crop, we also realize that there is competition with, do we feed the livestock or do we make compost? And we appreciate the importance of integrating livestock within the farm is very key. But from our perspective, or from my perspective, we advise farmers to diversify in terms of the crops that are within the farm. That is in terms of planting. There are those which will mature before the others. Some can be fodder crops, and others are crops for the for household use. So it's more of diversification, and also in terms of livestock, we appreciate the importance of livestock within farm, the integration, but also diversification of livestock, including some small ruminant within the farm, and livestock like chicken, for example, which will also provide a lot of manure for the farm. Thank you. Oh, just to mention about the climate change and agroecology. Agroecology is one of the approach to building climate resilience, but there are other approaches that needs also to be integrated. It is not a one-fit-all solution, but is one among the other approaches that need to be promoted. Thank you.
Yeah. For the microbial aspect, I would say that many studies show us indicators for our soils, but we need to adapt strategies for local context. In Africa, I think microbial aspect is important because manure or everything you bring to the soil can affect the functionality, the diversity, or the density. We need to be aware of that, but currently our means should be on what we can monitor, because microbial studies are expensive sometimes, and we need other sometimes indicators to challenge, to bring solution to our soil fertility or soil issues. It's okay, yeah.
Just briefly to respond to the comment or question about soil microbiology, I think this is just beginning to be understood, the real dimension of soil microbiome and the importance that it has for soil health, plant health, one health in general, even the connection with human health. It's similar to what now soil doctors are studying about the microbiome in people, just beginning to understand the importance of the microbes. And we are losing microbe biodiversity in the soil very rapidly without even know that exists. So that's an area that the private sector is just starting to invest. There's couple of private companies studying now the importance of soil microbiome and trying to transform that into real products that could help. So that is a critical area. The other point I would like to address is we tend to talk about agroecology or nature positive or organic farming as the end game. But we forget that this is a transition. And the transition depends on when we start. And sometimes the starting point does not allow to jump right away to agroecology or to organic farming. It needs a transition that could go step by step based on data, as correctly pointed out my colleague. Data helps us to define the transition. And that helps, and what's a very important aspect is the power of modeling and artificial intelligence. Now we have the possibility of play with scenarios and help decision makers to make the best decisions.
Thank you so much. We need to move to the second question, and just to wrap a very short on my side, I fully agree. What we can measure, better we can manage. So we need data. So I leave the floor to my friend Baron.
Thank you, Jean-Luc. And we're going to kind of build off of Nabil's last comments, which suggest that this space is not only about what we do in place, but the entire landscape and putting this into the planning process. And in particular, we're thinking about resilience and adaptation. So the question I'd like to ask all of you is, how could we fill the nature-based solutions for disaster risk reduction knowledge gap? Because we know a lot that's going on in that sector is not necessarily taking into account healthy soils. So how do we take into consideration that gap to support policymakers in their efforts to incentivize sustainable land management, making healthy soils a resilience enhancer to reduce the impacts of hazards and better adapt? And we'll just go through the same order if that's okay with you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Today I'm delighted to sit with scientists in soil. I would say one of the struggles that we usually have, especially in policy making and in the interaction of myself with policymakers, is the provision of evidence that this particular practice is working, and the request we need scientific evidence. And we'll always interact with scientists and we'll get the evidence. But sometimes it's very scientific, and even as a practitioner, it will have some difficulties for us to interpret it, to make it simple, so that I can be able to interact with that policymaker and explain all these. So if we are able to get simplified, we appreciate the role of science, but we need this science being broken down for a common practitioner like me, who is interacting with policymakers, to be able to explain and show that if this practice is promoted, we'll have healthy soil and we'll increase production and we'll have more food on the table. The other thing is the inclusivity while making the policies. Most of the time is when the communities and smallholder farmers, the pastoralists, are left out in the policy discussions. Yet there is a lot of knowledge with the farmers, a lot of knowledge with the community. They are the people who understand their context better. They understand their challenges more better, and they have the knowledge also to explain in their own interpretation what works well and what does not work within the locality. So mine is just to emphasize the need of having simplified scientific information, and also to have inclusivity, and let's make policies not for the community, but with the community and by the community. In Kenya, we are already coming up with policies. Currently, there is a formulation process of agroecology strategy and agroforestry strategy, and we have a soil fertility management policy. But the challenge that we always have is the implementation of these. Having the papers is good, but they are better when implemented and the change to be felt at the community level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would say this is very challenging, linking up soil health and disaster risk management. This is very challenging, and I went through the scientific literature. You can hardly see papers that are addressing this issue. So this is something I would say this is new to us scientists, and it's about time we dig into it to see what's going on, how we can make good use of soil health and the various, I think, agroecological practices to address, I think, disaster risk management. So, for instance, let me share with you the case of Ivory Coast. And cashew trees were introduced in Côte d'Ivoire in the 60s to fight against desertification. And now it turns out to be, I think, one of the commodity that is, I think, improving livelihood of farmers. But with, I'm associate scientist at eCraft C4, and we have been working in cashew landscape, trying to see what's going on in terms of soil health issues. And we found that, I think, organic matter is very low. I think the content of soil organic carbon is very low. So the question is because we are, I think, using monocropping cashew, that is the reason why the organic matter is low, or what is the reason? Because if we hypothesize that putting in place a cashew landscape will be a kind of agroecological and practice to fight against desertification, why is it that I think the soil fertility is not improving? So I think we need to dig into it, and we need to first implement a kind of research and collect data to come up evidence-based, natural-based solution to fix, I think, this issue. What is going on, and how we can come up with, I would say, evidence-based solution to fix disaster risk management. Then we can move to case studies and best practices. And when we are done with that step, we can move further and try to promote the best practices and scale them up to a very larger scale. This is what I can say. A lot needs to be done, and we hope that we will get the support from the international community, donors, to let us do the work. Thank you very much.
Oscar, can you give that microphone to Ellen? Other side. Yeah. So I just wanted to comment that your example with the cashews is a one solution approach, right? You address the poverty issue, plus a little bit the degradation issue, but you lost biodiversity in the process. You lose your organic matter. All of a sudden you have a climate change contributor instead of the other way around. It's an excellent example. Hélène, over to you.
Thank you. I said earlier that there is a need to adapt strategies to local contexts, but also ensure the commitment of all stakeholders. My colleagues talk about to simplify scientific knowledge. The knowledge is here, yes. But is it the best knowledge that reaches the farmers? And to meet their local knowledge, to be ensured there is finally adaptation or adoption of the results. We need to find that link to be sure that scientists and farmers are the co-conceptor of the solution, not for the result, but from the beginning. The second one is we need updating data, particularly from Africa. For example, in Senegal, fertilizer that we are using are from 1960. That's why our recent studies would like to update soil data at the national level and try to see if the fertilizer are still the one we need or we need to improve it to meet soil level and plant requirement. It means that that engagement, that commitment is necessary. Policy to be at all the steps and be sure that the objective is one. It means to be sure that we are taking care of that what is essential for us, our life, because soil is our base productive, but it is a life. Thank you.
A question about that, Ellen. The lack of data is a key issue here. If you're going to move up to a landscape approach so that everybody is working together for the common goal, data are critical. Oscar, over to you.
Thank you. That is a critical point. Data poverty, particularly in less developed countries, is a critical issue. Without sufficient data, decisions cannot be made. And once we have data, and scientists are good to produce data, as you suggest, another thing is to translate that data into ways of influencing decision-making by policymakers. Policymakers are a particular type of person and usually don't have long-term perspectives, and we need to keep educating and educating and educating.
Yeah. I'm impressed.
In Peru, for example, there is a lot of attention in policies for protecting the forest in the Amazon because obviously it's very visible. But most of the problems are originated in the high Andes, where the soils in the high Andes could store much more carbon than down in the jungle. But that's not visible. That's not sufficiently or politically attractive. And we need to transform that evidence into action by connecting with people, with the influence and the impact in human lives, like migration from the Andes to the jungle. That causes deforestation, illegal mining, etc. So, and all starts by not protecting and making it sustainable, the soil in the high Andes. So that connection needs to be made explicit for policymakers to realize the importance of that. There is one group, it's called the Soil for Society Network, which is beginning in the US and other organizations with funding from the US National Science Foundation, which is trying to make those connections, not just scientists, civil society, NGOs, policymakers, to really discuss the importance of soil. We need to elevate the importance of soil. We take soil for granted. It's something that we don't even see, but it's there, right? And unless we elevate the importance of soil to these debates, like in this case, this important event, and in our countries, we make soil visible and important, then policymakers will start paying attention and investing in soil conservation. The trends, unfortunately, are not positive. In Peru, 20, 30 years ago, there was a lot of investment in soil conservation measures in the Andes, in the highlands. Those are disappearing very rapidly, not maintained, because it's not politically attractive. So we need to really transform soil into action by showing policymakers and the people who vote for those policymakers that it's important matter. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate the comment. You can hold it. You can hold that one, Oscar. The comment about the networks, because the science policy interface has emphasized that if we don't start tapping these national and regional networks, kind of like what OSS is trying to do, actually, we won't win in this regard. So promoting that, and now parties are starting to pay attention to that need. Okay, Mabel, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think much of what is needed has already been said. And coming from the academia, I can only emphasize again, re-emphasize on research and the availability of data, which I'm very glad is going to be made available to us, Sentinel data on the soil health. And we can also go further to carry out further analysis on our soils, the physical and the chemical properties, because we are aware that it's degraded because we are not having sufficient yield. But to what level is it degraded? So we need those analyses to be able to tell what level is actually degraded and how we can amend it. And there is also another aspect that Juma raised when he asked a question about how they can advise local farmers on the usage of pesticides. Yeah, like one of the things we have observed in my country, just like they mentioned also in Senegal, is the usage of expired pesticides and other agrochemicals. And using this is further degrading the soil. So we are trying to look for ways in our recent projects in which we are going to engage with the government from the very onset and together with the community and see how they can carry out proper legislation that we ensure that these agrochemicals and pesticides are used correctly and the right one is being used. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mabel. I think that maybe at the end, Mamadou will talk to us a little bit about the incentives, because all of the things that you've talked about here don't necessarily line up with the government incentives for farming, right? And if they don't, how are you treating these small holders as micro enterprises? You're not, and they can't get over that startup hump. So it's very, very good point, Mabel. Nabil, over to you.
Thank you. I totally agree with all what was said, and mainly what was said by Oscar regarding the importance of raising the awareness of people about the importance of soils. We have to understand and to integrate in our mindset that soils are the main capital for millions of people. Soils are the ultimate refuge for their lives and for their futures. So this is a very important issue that we have really to integrate. It is not something that is what I want to say regarding the data and the information that we need for decision makers is that we need to work at different levels. We need to work at long term through the implementation of monitoring systems, but also at short term levels through the implementation of early warning systems. We need to have integrated data. We need to have to look at the land with the different aspects. We need data on soils, on the land cover, on the vegetation, on the digital elevation models to understand the landscape. We need information on the water bodies that we have, because we need to deal with floods, but also with drought. So we need to integrate all this issue. We need to have meteorological data. We need to have socio-economical data to know where are the settlements, what are the main place where people are making their activities, their agriculture activity mainly. So we at OSS, we are working on all these issues, so we are helping countries to implement long-term monitoring system, but also in the different projects we are monitoring and we are implementing, we have mainly always a component related to multi-risk early warning system. So we are trying, for example, because we are accredited by the Green Climate Fund and the Adaptation Fund, we are using these funds to work for land, for preserving land, and for giving work for people, and to try to diversify their incomes through making many kind of activities that are not only using and surusing the land, but to try to make activities that are in adequation with the real capacities of this land. So we need to integrate the different stakeholders, the researchers, the decision makers, and also the local communities that are responsible of the activities on the field, because they are the ultimate beneficiaries of the action. So we have to simplify, we have to, because we also sometimes forget or don't understand that these people can understand better than us what is happening on the field. So we have to integrate and we have to learn from them, and even we have to produce data and information coming from the experience and their interpretation on what is happening on the field. So we have maybe to have a new mindset and to change our approaches about also even how we are making research and how scientists are working. So we have also to avoid very narrow approaches that are focusing on very small issues. So all the researchers need to understand and to read and to learn about each others and to be near to the local population to understand the real needs. So the research need to be population driven. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to all of you. I just want to take that point and the one that was raised by Jerome about the knowledge gap being very large, right, in the scientific literature. This was noted also by the Science Policy Interface, and they suggested to the parties that they should commission a study on these major approaches that are taken, for example, eco-DRR, right? The approach taken in the entire Sendai framework community, ecosystem-based adaptation, which is embraced by CBD and UNFCCC, and sustainable land management, which is older than all of them by far, and which has the largest database in the world for these practices in WOCOT, and see whether these align. And guess what? They're perfectly, except for their ultimate goal, they're perfectly aligned. All of them embrace the same on-the-ground practices. They may strategically implement them differently, but they're fully aligned. That offers an opportunity here to fill this space so that our sustainable land management that's usually tied to the farm parcel can be landscape oriented for drought and flood mitigation. With that, I'd like to open it up to the audience. Do you have any questions, having listened to this range from stakeholders all the way to data and encouraging scientists to engage? Any questions for the group? Please.
Thank you very much. I'm Neda Gloy from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and here part of the Cameroonian delegation as we develop together with the Ministry of Environment and Climate Risk Analysis. And I would like to ask something about data. I work in crop modeling, and we often leave out a little bit the aspect of soil or soil data in terms of what will be the effect of climate change on soil properties. So when we do the modeling, we look how the crop yield will develop under climate change scenarios, so very long term. But with the soil, it more or less stays static. But then there are, of course, also some studies that show that organic soil carbon will be changing, and maybe desertification will also play a role. So what would be your opinion about that, or do you have a recommendation how to better consider it in my work?
Any other questions from the field to this panel? Be brave. Not one in the back.
Thank you so much. Juma Said again from Uganda. And my question, my expertise is in disaster risk management. And in one of our regions that used to one of our disaster-prone regions, especially landslide, used to have bamboo in the maybe in the years before development came. And however, with time, the bamboo was cleared because people in that area used to have bamboo as the staple food is bamboo. But when afforestation programs came, they brought eucalyptus, and it didn't help much. The soil still ran down and they experienced landslides. So I understand that the people who bring eucalyptus are well-meaning, but they are not informed. So I wonder, from where you stand, to what extent would you recommend multi-sectoral collaboration on soil health as a solution?
Two fantastic questions. Any more from the audience before I pass it over? Okay, I'll pass it now to the panelists. Anybody? Oh, sorry, I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just a student from Japan, and my question is, it's very understandable that the soil protection is less attractive compared to the tree planting or something. So my question is how to increase the capacity of soil as like a carbon sequestration or something like that from the policymaker point of view.
So just so you know, there's no such thing as just a student in this group. We value students more than any other event today. So, all right, with that, I now pass it over to the panelists. Who would like to jump in? We'll go in a different order. Who would like to jump in first? Okay, Jerome, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like to address the point made by the modeler, the climate modeler. I think up to date there are a number of, data on soil properties throughout Africa. And right now there are a number of initiatives going on. Soils for Africa is a European-based, project, coordinated by ISRIC, based in the Netherlands, Wageningen University. So I participated in African-wide program called the AFSIS, African Soil Information Service, coordinated by ICRAF. So I think you can't just go to the internet and just enter AFSIS and you get a number of, information regarding soils. Of course, we still need to update. There are some gaps that we need to bridge, but we are coming up with a number of, a solution. For instance, digital soil mapping that will provide people freely with data on soils. Thank you very much.
Super, thank you. We have to be real quick here, so a couple more feedback on the other two questions would be great. Nabil, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just want to raise the issue of the time scale, because when we are dealing about the specific characteristic of soils, indeed the change is in the long term. But it doesn't mean that we don't have to do something. So what is important, in my opinion, is the integration of the other factors, the environment of the soil. So we have the soil, but we have the trees on the soils. We have the settlements. We have the economical activities of the population. So we have to look at the soil not only as this physical support or with some specific biological and chemical information, but to look to the function the soil is giving. So we have to look at this. And for example, for the monitoring of the indicators, the three sub-indicators of the LDN, we will calculate them at the base of 5 years. So we think that in 5 years things are and can change. So things are nowadays changing quickly because the pressure on the soils are very big, and we have to understand that. Thank you.
Anybody else want to jump in? Or a little bit, one other question that wasn't fully answered yet. Go ahead, Alain.
Yeah, I would like just to emphasize that we need to harmonize our protocols. Sometimes we have results, but we cannot put in the same database just because the approach is different or the methodology is different. We need to have to harmonize our protocol, and that is why FAO with AfriLabs we are trying to harmonize protocol from each country to get a huge database. My colleague from Uganda, I would like just to say that from scientists, our approach should be, or people who are coming outside from country or locality, we should have an approach that is participative and inclusive, means we have to co-construct our approach and our solution. Thank you.
Now, I'll finish this up by linking back to both questions that relate to trees. I mean, the reality is that we're far more sophisticated now from the science point of view in understanding the right thing to do in each location. Right things, right places, right scale. And it's not about one being good or bad. It's that we know, for example, eucalyptus has these benefits and these drawbacks. And what is absolutely right for that location? That optimization is key. It's fundamental to land degradation neutrality, and it's equally important to disaster risk reduction. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Mamadou Barrow, anthropologist from the University of Arizona, who's going to really ground us because he thinks about this from the human perspective first before he moves to biophysical. Mamadou, over to you.
Thank you very much. This is really fascinating, and I think you guys did a fantastic job. And actually, it helped me actually think through the whole thing. And I'm coming up with some key elements here that I just would like to share with all of us here. If you have to sum up, many of the things you talked about, there are crisis would be one of them. Okay, definitely. I mean, if you look at the problems of the quality of soil, land degradation, what you talk about the different countries, Kenya, Cameroon, Senegal, there is a need really, as Nebel said also clearly, a need for partnership. I mean, partnership comes out as an important key leverage point that came out, very strongly here. And perhaps also, as we think about partnership, because sometimes, as the student said also very well here, it's about labeling, how we label things. When we talk about trees and plants, it might be more interesting than talking about soil quality. But if you link those two things, then the policymakers go, oh, now I see the connection between the things. So that's why there might be a need for all of us to think about a framework that will get all the partners really to look at soil quality in a different way, especially in this crisis situation that we are witnessing around the world. And in that, as Baron said, we might need to refocus. I mean, put people first. Okay, people and land together, and quality of land. I mean, it's very important. I remember from a famous Senegalese poet, Birago Diop, in his, one of his poems, it's called Le Souffle in French. He puts a connection between, people and land and quality together in one thing. By just saying, well, really, it's not, we cannot take the, I mean, if you want to protect livelihoods, you have to protect the land, the quality of the land. I mean, that's why I think if you put people first in this framework that I would like maybe all of us to think about, we can put at the center people, land together, because as one thing, and then look around the basic needs of people, and also the means that they are using, I mean, all the livelihoods, and also look at stakeholders in all this. If we're able to do that, perhaps we might be able to be more convincing. Yes, we need data. I think data is available, as you say, is available, but there is more, we need more data. It's very obvious. But also we need to get down to the level of what's happening at the level of people. I remember, as some of you guys who pointed here, is in terms of knowledge, you need also to get the communities to be involved, to be participating in all you do. I mean, we as scientists need to be also getting help. I mean, it will make the cause more stronger, and people will be in a position really to be defending it more as it is right now. And in that sense, also, I would like to add another dimension. What I think we need to be thinking about is the dimension of land governance, okay, land tenure and land governance, because it's very important. If you talk about quality of land, and yesterday there was a fascinating talk, right here, from a wonderful woman who said something fascinating, and it's still resonating in my mind. The idea that if you really, I mean, when we talk about if you don't own land, for instance, why would you invest your time on protecting it? Okay. So, and if you look at Africa right now, I mean, many of those, I mean, they were able to talk about some statistics, very low women actually own land, and that needs to go up if you want to really improve the quality. So it's the discourse we have in terms of improving the science and all the things, it needs to be put together with the people themselves also at the same time. So and that's why I think what was also said here, there is one word I would like also to remember today, is simplification. Simplify things so people can get it, so they can understand really what the link between this soil quality, climate change, and all these things are linked. And I was very impressed, when working in Niger. I mean, I've been spending 25 years, through all communities all over Africa, including all these countries. And it's just, I remember Joe Tabor, for instance, from the University of Arizona. He was in the Senegariba Valley, I mean, doing very interesting work using high-tech stuff. But then he came to me and said, Mamadou, actually, this farmer taught me more, because he was able, in a very simple way, to kind of summarize some of the things he was talking about. So that knowledge also, in my view, and what you said also here, needs to get down to the communities, and we really need to focus on it. And I'm very impressed with the fact that here we have different partners working together and on an issue which is capital. But the problem right now, I think the message needs to be amplified in a way that people can grab it better. I think I'm going to stop here for the sake of time.
Thank you all very much. That brings to a close this session. I really appreciate the early birds in the audience. That was really nice of you to join us. And I want to thank all of the panelists. It's just been fantastic, gratifying for me and for Jean-Luc to have you all here. And with that, I will close. Thank you. Quick family photo.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. Okay.